In this video, we will talk a little bit about evaluating the success of a training program. Training is a large financial investment for organizations. Companies in the United States spend over $60 billion a year on training, so it makes sense to ensure that they're getting a good return on that investment. And if the company is trying to make the training as useful to employees as possible, they have to know what is working and what isn't. We're going to focus in this video mostly on different types of evidence of training success. These are training criteria. We've seen this word criteria before. When we talked about selection, we saw that criteria were measures of employee success. In this case, training criteria are measures of training success. Let's say that management at a manufacturing firm are discussing unacceptably high rates of accidents on the shop floor, and they decide that all workers will go through a safety training as a way to reduce future accident rates. What are some possible standards that they could use to judge the success of a safety program? In 1959, Kirkpatrick came up with 4 levels of criteria to consider. They're still quite popular in thinking about different kinds of trainee success. The first level are trainee reactions. In other words, how does the trainee feel about the training? This can include how much they liked it, how much they felt they learned, and/or how useful they feel it will be back on the job. Usually these data are collected with a survey right after the training is over. Sometimes this is called a smiles test because it's about the satisfaction of those who've just gone through the training. The second level is learning. This is what it sounds like. In other words, how much did trainees actually learn in terms of skills, knowledge, or proficiency? Now with the reactions, you can just get that at the end of the training program with a survey. But with learning, we really need to take both a pre-test and a post-test of knowledge or skill so that we can see what change has occurred because of the training. If we only collect the post-test measure, there's no way to know if the KSAOs that employees have after training are due to that training or if they actually had those KSAOs before the training even began. Third, we have behavior, or what the trainees actually do with their new knowledge or skill once they're back on the job. In other words, has the trainee's behavior changed as a result of the training? Are they applying the things taught in training? As with learning, we need to collect pre-training behavior data to serve as a baseline so we know how behavior has changed after training has taken place. We have a name for this process of taking what you've learned in training and actually using it on the job. This is called transfer of training. Transfer of training is really crucial because otherwise the training is just an expensive break from work that doesn't actually impact how the work is done once the training is over. The final level of criteria is results, which refers to how successful the training was in meeting the broader organizational objectives. To separate results from behavior, you might like to think of this as bottom line results, such as increased productivity or efficiency or reduced costs. This is not about what the employee does, it's about the outcome of any behavioral change. And again, like with learning or behavior levels, we have to know what was happening before the training to know if the training actually made a difference. To make sure that we understand these, let's go back to our safety training example and see how we would apply these 4 levels. So for reactions, we would ask the employees if they liked the safety training program and if they thought it would be useful in improving their behavior and making themselves more safe. For learning, we could tap how much they know about the safety procedures and compare that to how much they knew beforehand. How much did they actually learn and what level of proficiency have they gained? For behavior, we want to know if they're using the procedures that they learned on the job. Are they actually being more safe? Are they following new regulations? And for results, we want to see if there's a decrease in the accident rate after the training as compared to before the training. So we've seen what the 4 levels of Kirkpatrick's model are. And the next question you might ask is, that sounds like a lot to have to measure. Do you have to measure all 4, or can you get away with measuring just 1 or 2? If all 4 are correlated, meaning that the success in one area is related to success in the other 3 areas, then we might be able to save ourselves some time and effort by just measuring 1, and that might indicate that things are going well in all areas. Well, Research does suggest that some of these different criteria are positively correlated with one another. In other words, if things are looking good in one area, they're looking good in the other as well, for the most part. But there's one important exception. Reactions measures do not correlate with the other three criteria. So if people say they like the program and they found it useful, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was actually useful in increasing their knowledge or skill, or that it changed their behavior when they were back on the job. So relying only on reactions measures is probably a bad idea. This is a good segue to an important question. What do organizations actually do? How commonly do they evaluate training at different levels? Let's take a look at some results from a 2005 survey. As you can see, most employers measure reactions to their training programs, about 90%. But only about half measure what employees actually learned in these programs. And perhaps even more shocking, few organizations actually tap whether there is any transfer of training or bottom line results. Now, while it might be understandable that companies don't want to spend too much on evaluating their training after having spent money on the training itself, it does seem pretty short-sighted. Like I said at the beginning of the video, U.S. organizations spend over $60 billion on training each year, but less than a quarter of the time do they check to see whether it has any impact at all on employee behavior, and actually evaluating whether the training did what it was supposed to do in terms of bottom line results. As you can see, that happens less than 10% of the time. Imagine if we took the same laissez-faire approach to other interventions, such as drug treatments for diseases or safety measures in airplanes. Well, that's my little rant for this video. I feel better now. Hope you found this discussion of training evaluation helpful. See you next time.